experience getting to know Matt, and he's really good at what he does. And I had an opportunity to hear this workshop in a little bit different format. We did this workshop, Matt did this workshop, and we offered it as the Albany Christian leaders to the school district when they were asking for help for their teachers. And so I got to sit in on it, and it was, done, and he didn't really talk about the Lord or anything like that. It was done in a very just scientific, matter-of-fact way, and it was still just awesome and so helpful. And there isn't a single person in this room that doesn't battle stress, measures of anxiety, different things like that. We're human, and that's just part of it. And I think the biggest thing that you will get from today is that you're not alone, and that we need each other. So, without further ado, Mr. Matt Kimmel, and he'll tell you more about himself, but he has become a really good friend, and I'm very excited to share him with you. So, welcome back.
Emily is very kind. You probably all experienced that. So
people are always
so you'll just adjust your expectations accordingly, right? So to the measure of kindness that you experience with Emily, adjust your expectations as for how good I'm going to do. Okay?
No.
As long as we can all do that, that's fine.
Okay.
So, and I feel so tall up here, but I don't want to.
It's a good spot for you.
I don't want to breathe on anyone, but okay. Yeah. Well, just welcome. I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, I'm Matt Kimmel, and because this is a workshop for brothers and sisters, I'm gonna pray.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I could do that at all the workshops I do. But we get to do it today. Lord Jesus, we're thankful to be here. God, as much as we are processing aspects of our emotions and psychology and all those things, God, ultimately we acknowledge that you are the one who designed us. We acknowledge that you are the one who has knit us together. God, all that we talk about is just us continuing to discover your good work. And so I pray, God, that you would bless this time, that you would fill it with your presence. We thank you, God, that you have authored and you're continuing to complete and perfect all that has been done in us, and we give ourselves to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So, so I did this. I've been doing kind of different iterations of this workshop for a number of different places. We had the superintendent from GAPS asked if we could do something as a church community, and so this was kind of an idea. And from there, we did a few kind of like community-based ones that had just kind of a handful of whether it was some teachers or we had some medical workers. Also opened it up like specifically asking for like police officers because of just different stress and different things they endure. And so from that, I ended up getting invited to do it for some schools, so like entire school staffs. And then I just recently did this in February. I participated in one that was geared toward people who lost their homes in the wildfires, on the coast. And so we did it for that group of people as well. And so what we're finding is that the different ways that people experience stress, all of it comes back to core needs that people have that they're not getting met, and that's, if we can help meet those needs, we can help them walk through what they're going through. So, just a little bit about myself. Those are my gifts, my wife and my two kids, Becca, Adeline, and Jebediah, and they are as cute and as fun as they look. So, and I'm certified pastoral counselor through the Integrative Counseling Institute. I'm not a clinician, so anybody that comes to see me for counseling, I tell them I'm not an LPC, I'm not an LMFT, I'm not a licensed social worker, I'm not a clinician, I'm not going to give you a diagnosis. My credentialing comes from the fact that I'm an ordained minister, And so I do pastoral counseling. But that pastoral counseling is a bit different than some other pastoral counseling at times. Because some people, when they go and experience pastoral counseling, a lot of what they experience is what we like to call Christian CBT. So if you've ever heard of CBT, CBT is a kind of a popular therapy these days called cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive behavioral therapy has its place in certain things, but the whole idea behind it is if we can change your cognitions, your thinking, then it'll change your behaviors. And we think that's really great, but the problem is that you miss the heart. It turns out everything comes from the heart. So sometimes in the Christian realm, we, with the best of intentions, miss it. Not just in this, we miss it in other ways too. I miss it in a lot of ways at times. But Christian CBT is essentially where somebody comes in and they're just in crisis and it's really hard, and a Christian leader or a pastor or somebody gives like a lot of scriptures, hey, if you do this, if you do this. One of my favorite ones is somebody comes in, they're super anxious, and the one that most people quote is,
Be anxious for nothing.
yeah, so good.
Sorry.
Have any of you ever been anxious and been told that?
Yes.
Has it helped?
No.
Oh, interesting. Weird. So, what we do at the Integrative Counseling Institute, Dr. David Mannock, he is licensed. He's an LMFT. He's certified to supervise LMFTs and trains everybody. And he's been a pastor since '75, and he's been doing psychotherapy since the early '80s. And he's got like over 25,000 client hours, which is just insane. Most people that are teaching have maybe about 5,000 to 7,000 client hours. So if you think about how much experience this guy has, it's just a gift that I get to work with him. He's in Salem, and he took a group of pastors that he felt like had some gifting and calling for this, and he's training us to clinical standards. So the very same training he put hundreds of students at George Fox and at Multnomah and at Fuller Theological and all these other places that he's taught, he's taking us through personally, which is like phenomenal. And our whole kind of impetus behind what we're trying to do is, if you take that example of like Philippians 4, which is beautiful, Paul's speaking to the Philippians and he's trying to help encourage them, right? Philippians is often known as the epistle of joy, right? And he's encouraging them, and at one point he says, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God, right? Well, what we do is when somebody walks in and they're really anxious, we try to incarnate that with them. So instead of telling them, you need to not be anxious, Paul said don't be anxious, we actually practice non-anxiety with them. And then we're praying for them throughout the whole time. And we're thanking God for the different pain and the different things that they're bringing. And we're just doing that all in our hearts behind the scenes as we're monitoring what's going on. And we're trying to incarnate the very things of God with people. That's the beauty of Jesus. Like often, yes, he quoted scripture, but Jesus incarnated scripture, right? And everybody that interacted with him had this breath of heaven and God's Spirit that was just so like life-changing, right? And so we are taking kind of this hybrid approach. That's his educational background. But that's a part of his diagram. It's so funny. He's such a researcher. I've tried to take it and make it as like clean as possible, and it's still just everywhere. We take this hybrid working incarnational theology as well as neuroscience, psychology, neurobiology, intersubjectivity, psychoanalysis, attachment theory, and then especially emotionally focused therapy. And we like mix them all together and we integrate it all into how we try to walk through things with people. So that is the background as to kind of what I'm going to be basing everything off of. The more I work these things through and teach them or sit with people and counsel them, the more the scriptures make sense to me, actually. I'm reading back through Romans right now, and Romans was always such a book that felt very, it felt like Paul's longest gospel expose, trying to help people come to know the gospel, and yet if you really stop and get the relational dynamic going on with Paul and the Roman Christians, it really, it changes everything. So the more we grow and develop in relationship and emotions, the more we actually are able to see God better. And one of the biggest reasons I would say that is because growing up in the church throughout my life, and actually we'll be sharing about some of the growing up in the church, I'll be here tomorrow morning sharing with Emily, is that we're told to trust the Lord with all your heart, right? And yet, the more and more I work with people, and especially Christians, who have the burden to trust the Lord with all their heart. They feel the desire to, they feel this pull, I want to trust the Lord, but there's aspects of their hearts that they have not uncovered, they're not willing to go into, they're not willing to acknowledge, because it's too painful, because they learned to shut it off a long time ago, because they were never told you should do that, because the majority of a lot of Christian teaching is very academic and not actually dealing with relational aspects of who God is. And so sometimes I challenge people in our sessions and I go, I hear that you want to trust the Lord with your whole heart, and that's beautiful. But you can't trust him with something you're not willing to face. You have to face it. If I'm going to give something to somebody, I have to pick it up first. And there's a lot of things in our lives that we're not really willing to pick up. And so, part of what I want to do today is I want to, we're going to process what does it look like to identify stress and walk through stress and what are the things that are stressing us out and all those different things. Has anybody in here ever experienced stress?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, so please, when I ask questions, I would love to hear feedback that really helps things work. And then we're going to talk about how has God designed us to actually break up and deal with things that cause anxiety and struggle in our lives. A lot of people are content with coping with stress. That's one of the main terms these days, right? What are your coping mechanisms? How are you coping with that these days, right? We've had a pretty interesting last year and a half, right? How are you coping with everything going on? And I actually love that both the neuroscience and from what I understand from the scriptures is that God hasn't designed us, and that's seen in the neuroscience, and hasn't revealed to us, and that's seen in the scriptures, that we're just meant to cope. We're actually meant to have these things break up and to have freedom. And so that's what we're going to be working through today. So up to this point, any questions? Good.
Very good. We're really smart. We're all
In your packets, go ahead and open those up. You should have 2 pens next to you, one fat one, one skinny one. And you should have a colored piece of paper. In that colored piece of paper, if you could tri-fold it and make it a little triangular name tent and put your name on it, so when you're talking, I know who you are. That would be super helpful. That's what the fat pen is for.
Is that like this?
You can do that, or you can tri-fold it.
I'm not smart.
You can half it too. That's fine.
Here.
Either way, half is fine. Yep.
Oh.
There you go. Yeah, hold that up. Hold that up for everybody to see.
Good job, and the teacher in the room.
And then on the side where it's facing me, please write your name.
In bold?
In the fat marker, the big one. The other thing that you'll do is behind that is a copy of all of the slides that I'll have up there and then some space to take notes. Stephanie, nice, Julie, crushing it. That's what I'm talking about. Stephanie's happy. Taylor, good. Emily, Ann, Jim, Charlotte, Julie, Mike, Chad, Leanne. Is that Kathleen? Catherine.
It's just missing the R.
I did? Oh no. She was just telling me, you have such a beautiful handwriting and I missed my
Paige.
The R is skinny though, that's perfect.
It just helps me not have to remember so much.
Change your name.
English isn't her first language.
Oh, I was just meaning you.
She only speaks like 5 other words. This is Olivia's mom.
Oh, wonderful.
Nice to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you.
This is where Olivia's brilliance comes from.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah, missing R's.
Everybody has.
You're Swiss, aren't you?
I am.
My wife is Swiss.
Oh wow.
Well, I mean, she wasn't born in Switzerland, but both her parents immigrated. And so she's 100%. She's got chocolate flowing through her veins.
And cheese.
And chocolate and cheese. Those are the two key ingredients for her blood.
Can she yodel? Oh, she can yodel.
My wife can yodel.
She can
She
yodel.
yodels.
No?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so behind the name tent sheet is a packet, and that has all the slides, and you can pull that out and follow along. And if you want to make any notes, great. If you don't, great. I'm going to throw probably a decent amount of information at you. Some people describe it as a fire hose, but that's the difference between me and Dr. Manoff, is that he puts like 3 fire hoses out, you know. And then like halfway through the day, he's like, come on guys, don't you know this stuff? And we're like, no, we know. So, okay. So in the 90s, they started scanning our brains. And everybody's like, after all the news that's been happening, that's really weird stuff. No, they started in neuroscience, they started scanning the brain and they started to map out the different areas of the brain and what kind of what lights up and all those different things. And psychology took a major turn in the 90s. Now, psychology up until that point had been kind of a mixture of some interesting, weird stuff, some kind of good stuff, and then some stuff that was just like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And so, when the 90s hit, they started scanning the brain, and when they scanned the brain, it was like, it wasn't just a few brain scans, it was like tens of thousands of brain scans. And when they did that, what they were able to find was, through this and on all this brain mapping, they were able to actually come to what we would call empirical data, which psychology up until that point lacked. There was a lot of psychology that was just based on observation. So how, get a group of people, give them this situation. How do you feel about that? Take down your research. Good enough up until then. The 90s, we hit empirical hard data, which was so needed. And there was one group, there's lots of groups that did it, but one group was led by a guy named Dr. Daniel Siegel. And Dr. Dan Siegel, if you've ever seen, has anybody ever seen the hand model of the brain? Okay, the hand model of the brain was developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel, okay? And he's written a ton of stuff on the way that we're wired and neuroscience and neurobiology and how that affects parenting and all these different things. Phenomenal guy, but he chaired a 40 PhD think tank. So at UCLA, they got together 40 different PhDs from all different sociology, psychology, theology, every ology under the sun, 40 of them, and they spent 5 years poring over these brain scans. Isn't that phenomenal? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much brain power going into studying these brain scans. And they were able to find out that the brain wires 4 times faster in the first 5 years of your life than any other time in your life. Mm-hmm. And they were also able to find out things like that 90% of your limbic system is developed in the 3rd trimester in the womb. They were able to find out that your parents, your biological mother and father, wire you very specifically. One wires you for how you're going to relate to people, one wires you for identity in those first 5 years of life. And then they also found out that between ages 5 and 7, you go through 3 different stages of something called infant amnesia, where basically if you were to think about like, if your parents are your electricians, and you've just got studs, and they're wiring everything. Your mom's wiring you for how you're going to relate to people. Your dad's going to wire you for your sense of identity. And then at 5 years old, you go through infant amnesia. It's like the sheetrock goes up. And you have no idea where the wiring is or why it's wired that way. You just have the wiring. And so people act out in certain ways, you know, and maybe like if you want to use the idea, it's like there's a short and you see a little like burn mark over there. You're not necessarily knowing that it comes because over there was something missing that was connected over here. You just see that there's a problem there. You don't necessarily know why, because you've gone through that infant amnesia. That's also why you're not able to put together linear memories before 5 years old. Usually. Some people, there's some exceptions. Some people, very few people are able to put together linear memories, but once you've gone through infant amnesia, and the sheetrock goes up, it's your hippocampus that goes and starts to develop, and you can actually put together linear memories. So we did this, and then we did this, and then dad took me here, and then mom did this, and you can actually play through the timeline of a memory. Previous to that, most of your memories are connected to like your senses. So if you ever have like a certain smell, like grandma's, you know, stew that she made or whatever, if you smell a stew like that, it instantly takes you back to being at her house. Right? And you might not be like, I remember because it was 3:05 and I walked into grandma's house and it was a beautiful sunny day and the lilacs were, you know, blooming and I smelled her stew. No, all that you know is like stew, grandma's house, right? Smell it, it's there, right? You see it, it's there. You hear it, it's there. Sensory-based memories. And so, other things that we've learned was that in those first 5 years of your life, your most important bond for gaining a sense of ability to deal with adversity comes through what's called co-regulation with your parents, and specifically your mother. Okay? And so often what that would look like, and they did all sorts of different tests and experiments, and if you go and look at there's a really classic one. Has anybody heard of the infant strange situation? Anybody ever heard of that?
No.
Mary Ainsworth? Anyways, all these different things that like they go and they see how the child will react, and what's happening is this bond is being formed, and they call this bond attachment. And your attachment has everything to do with how you handle life. You think attachment is just, well, I have a pretty good relationship with my dad, or I have a pretty good relationship with my mom. No, the truth is that every single client that I get through my door will be experiencing life based on their most core attachments. And so, I've got clients who are dealing with adversity through COVID, and the biggest thing that they're dealing with is a sense of insecurity, not feeling like they know what's going to happen next. I've got other clients who are dealing with COVID in a way where they're just very angry. And they don't feel necessarily afraid, they feel really angry at the situation. Well, a lot of that has to do with what they experienced as a child. And you go, well, you've got to be kidding me. Like, we're, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old now. We're not that affected by those things anymore. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. We are. And so anyone who understands how things are built understands this. If your foundation has places missing or has cracks or things like that, you can build the most beautiful house on top of it. And after a couple of years, it starts to sag, and the walls are going to crack, and things are not going to work right. And when there's adversity, like an earthquake, it's going to be less stable, and it's not going to handle things as well. All of that is because of the foundation that was built. That's attachment. So important. So, one of the big things that they found out in the 90s was, up until that point, they thought that everybody has just this like personal brain that, you know, we developed it ourselves, we regulated ourselves. And in the 90s, when they did the neuroscience and the brain scans, they figured out that we actually have what's called a social brain. That's the way we're designed. It's how we've always been designed. So my like most tangible way to explain this is this. Has anybody ever experienced a child that is struggling with self-esteem? Anybody? Okay. What do they usually sound like? Besides just annoying. What do they sound like? What are some of the things they might be saying?
I can't.
I can't. What else?
I'm not good enough.
Not good enough. Yep. Anybody else? Quite a few hands that said they've dealt with them.
It's her fault.
It's her fault. Okay. Blaming. Okay. I usually hear, when I hear self-esteem issues, I hear things like, I don't think they love me. I don't belong. You'd be surprised how young you'll hear, I'm not valuable. It's pretty amazing. It comes real young. And so, if any of you hear somebody say that, like a child say that, what's your reaction? What are you going to do about it? You're the person in proximity to them. What are you going to do? Do you just leave them be?
Reaffirm.
You reaffirm them. Why?
Pour it in, I guess. I don't know. Just do.
I love hearing your thoughts. Pour it into them. Okay. What else? Why reaffirm them? Why not just let them, stick on their own and just figure it
We
out?
recognize it's not true.
You recognize it's not true. Okay. What else?
We don't want them to believe that.
You don't want them to believe that, right? Now, up until the 90s, and actually most things are still based on what's called one-person psychology. This is what things were previously, before the neuroscience hit. People would say, we need to help them learn how to self-regulate. Anybody ever heard that term? Self-regulate. Self-regulation's best friend is called coping. Okay? We need to learn to help them self-regulate. So, if that was truly the case, all of those people who said that should leave that child in the corner saying, I'm not valuable, I don't belong, I suck, I'm not good enough. That's what, according to the science they were reporting, they should have done. But every single one of them goes over to the kid and says, you do belong. You are valuable. And then what does the kid do?
Perks up.
Comes to life. Huh. Interesting. Shouldn't they just be able to self-grow and self-regulate? No. Because God didn't make us that way. But they finally figured that out in the 90s. They figured out that we have a brain that is actually affected by other people. Our brain is actually wired through relationships. So, if you have someone who's in complete isolation, that's the way to make them devolve. Devolve.
The opposite of evolve.
So, interesting, or you could, instead of using devolve, you could use the word deteriorate. The opposite of growth. So when I look back at, I don't envy anybody in leadership trying to make all the decisions over the last year about COVID. But I can't ignore the fact that according to the neuroscience, the more people are isolated, the less they grow. I can't ignore that. And so what we've seen through things like COVID and all those things is we've seen the rise of anxiety, the rise of depression, the rise of suicidality, the rise of divorce issues. Domestic violence was off the charts. In Benton County alone, they had a 119% increase in stranglings. Didn't make the news.
Wow.
So sad. 10 million cases on average of children experiencing abuse. That's an average year. They have no way to track what 2020 was. Because all of the main ways that they would report, they had no access to. So, the reason why I want to bring this information is to help people start to go, this is how we help each other in this time. And the beautiful thing about it is, especially with this group of people, I get to say it, and this is how God's designed it.
Amen.
I love it, I love it, I love it. Good, solid neuroscience psychology has never ever, at least in Dr. Manoff's 40 years, I trust him a lot, as you can tell, never has contradicted good, honest theology. Because good, honest theology is looking at the revealed words of God. Good, honest, neuroscience-based psychology is discovering the created order of God.
That's good.
That's what it is. And they complement each other beautifully. So, all y'all were looking at this picture and being like, this is such a funky picture, right? It's because we're connected. It's because the way that our brains work, we actually have neural pathways that are formed because of relationship. And through the neural mapping, they were able to find out this part of the brain is formed more by mom, or this part of the brain is formed more by dad, and this is the age that this part actually forms. And it's phenomenal. And if you ever want your mind to be blown, read or listen to, it's actually a series of lectures by Dr. Dan Siegel called The Neurobiology of We. I didn't say weed. We. The Neurobiology of We. You don't need to go through the seventh one. The seventh one, he gets into a bunch of Buddhism stuff. You don't need that. 1 through 6, though, he actually talks about all the neurobiology science. And I've gone through it 4 times, and I think I'm about 30% of the way of getting it. Maybe 30%. That's probably generous. So, all of that to say, this sets up how we are going to engage stress, hardship, adversity. Okay? Because I could come in here and I could give you lots of grounding techniques. I could give you lots of breathing techniques. I could give you lots of coping skills. And that's really neat. All that will do is do this. The stress that hits you, you'll do this. But the problem is it'll circle back around. And often it's kind of like a snowball. The next time it comes around, it's a little bit bigger. And then it's a little bit bigger. And then it's a little bit bigger. So, what I want us to do is talk about how we actually slowly over time melt that snowball. So, I would love to hear from you guys right now. What are some of the ways that you are experiencing stress in your lives?
How it manifests or what stresses us out?
Yeah, what's stressing you out? We'll get to manifest. What's stressing you out? Is it the way that the Beavers just fell apart against the Ducks in baseball this last weekend? Man, I told my dad, I'm going to turn that off. It's just bumming you out, man. What is stressing you out? For real.
Health.
Help. Help me understand. Yeah. Yeah, so some of what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong here, suffering. You suffer because of the kidney stone stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's chronic. So it's not just if I had to deal with it once. It's the repeated aspect of it, the repeated nature of it. Is that part of what really contributes to that health for you?
Yeah, and just that I can't get them to the things I want to be able to choose.
Yeah, you can't get to the things you want to do. Yeah, in that you struggle to have control to get to the things you want to do, probably. Okay. It's hard to feel powerless to something because it just,
Right.
you keep going back to that suffering. Yeah, it's hard. Thanks for sharing. What else?
I have a family member who has a major disability.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much the only sibling that has stepped in to basically save her life.
Mm,
And so it's a constant tightrope of what is my part here and what is not my part? What do I need to just trust the Lord with?
yeah,
And let Him versus me, walking on the water instead of being under it.
yeah,
And so it's the future is, I don't know. So it's a constant, it's been a constant stress in my life.
yeah,
But walking it out victoriously.
yeah. So there was a few things I heard there, and I want to make sure I get it. One is the nature of the fact that you're the only sibling that has stepped in.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And when you say the only, I actually hear a little bit of almost like an aloneness there in it.
It's super, it's painful.
Yeah.
that Nobody else has stepped up like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah, it's,
It is. Yeah. And then the fact that there's this constant question of like, what's going to happen?
yeah, I think I have more peace about that in God's help me with that a lot. It's just the feeling alone in it.
Yeah.
And having to carry the weight of it.
Yeah. Okay, feeling alone in it and carrying the weight of it. Yeah. Which those two play off each other, I bet. The weight of it makes it feel more lonely, and the loneliness of it makes it feel more weighty. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Julie. Isn't that amazing that loneliness is a huge contributor to stress? That tells us so much right there. Confirms the whole what they found out about that we're wired for a relationship. Yeah. Okay. Good. Anybody else want to share what is stressing you out?
I'll
Yeah.
share.
Yeah.
Just about every relationship that I have in my personal life, each of those people are going through a major situation in their life.
Wow.
And it's hard to be a friend and know what to do.
Yeah. So almost every relationship, personally, in your life,
Correct.
has something like a trial or something really difficult going on.
Correct.
Okay. And the difficult thing, I think you used the word pain. I don't know if you didn't use that word, correct me. Is to know how to be a friend.
Correct.
And when you say know how to be a friend, like what does that look like? What are the questions for you with those people?
The question, I think, for health issues,
Yeah.
we know the power of God,
Yeah.
and we've seen it demonstrated.
Yeah.
And yet, in most of the situations, there hasn't been a breakthrough through that.
Mm,
So that questions not so much your faith as
Yeah.
just the timing
yeah.
of everything.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be present in people's lives when they're going through a whole lot
Yeah.
and let them know that you're not invading their privacy and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
that you're there for them.
So it's kind of this like I want to be there, but you don't want to be there so much that they feel like you're
Correct.
pressing too much.
Correct.
And then the fact that it's every single
Yeah.
one of them.
And you look at it and you say, oh, it's just my age because my circle of friends are getting. And I don't believe that, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, I deny that.
Yeah.
But yet it seems to be showing itself to be
Yeah,
true.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ann. I really appreciate that. Anybody else want to share?
I was gonna say work, for me, work is, it's sort of interesting, you think as you get farther along in your career, you feel less and less stress, less anxiety. And yet, a lot of people that I used to go to for technical advice and such, they're now retired, out of the picture, and now everybody's, it's me.
Coming to you.
And I've got a technical leadership role that, it doesn't seem like the situation is getting any better for me. The anxiety is actually increased over time, which is, feels like, makes me want to retire now.
And he is just a few years from retirement, so he's like,
Yeah, yeah. Heavy is the head that wears the technical crown,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it's, I mean, the dynamic, well, part of what you shared was the people I used to go to. That's like, there's an aspect of people coming to you, which I'm sure you've had people come to you throughout some of your career, but you had somebody to go to. And the lack of having somebody to go to, I wonder how much that has increased that.
There was some security, and
Yeah.
you want to go to somebody else and they say, oh, that's going to be okay, we'll figure out that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's
It's not there.
So,
And it makes you want to go up and down. Right?
I'm going to camp.
What's that? What's that?
I'm going camping.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you for sharing that, Jim. So, people are stressed. Right? So, let's talk about how it manifests. In your packet, there's a sheet that looks like that, but it has some questions on it. Go ahead and pull that up. Group exercise time. We're gonna do this part, and then we're gonna take a 5-minute break to let you all grab more coffee and stretch.
There's the stress.
So, I'm not going to follow the exact questions on there. If you would like to take this and do this with somebody else, you're welcome to just follow the questions that are on there as kind of walking you through things. I'm gonna do kind of a light version, just because we're in a large group. It works a lot better if you're in a smaller group of people. Okay, so the first thing on there is just take a look at just the different ways that they're talking about stress here. We experience stress in our body, in our minds, in our emotions, in our behaviors, and it manifests the way that we react to stress. And you'll find that the way that you react to stress actually tells you something about the kind of stress you're dealing with as well. And so, and the beautiful thing about this is that you can replace that word with a number of other things. Okay? So you can replace that word, stress, and go, what is causing all these things? And you could replace it with the need to be the one with the answers. What does this cause me? Chronic suffering. What does this cause me? Being alone and trying to help a family member. What does this cause me? Okay? We're not talking about necessarily just the word stress. We're talking about the things that are the real cause of the stress. So some people put in there anxiety or relational anxiety or all sorts of things. But you can do this as kind of like a way of mapping out what the thing that is causing you struggle, how is it manifesting difficulty in your life? Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is this. We're going to say this. This does not cover everything. So there might be a word that you go, it's close to something on here, but it's more like this. Just write it in right next to it. Okay? You can write it in. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to look through that list, those lists, and I want you to just circle all the ones that you experience in your life on a regular basis. Circle all the ones you experience in your life on a regular basis. If you need to do batch circling, I understand. Okay, give you just a couple more seconds. Circle all of the ones that you experience in your life. When you've done that, turn your name tent on its side. Just so I have a good idea of how many people have gotten through. You guys do? Okay, most everybody's done, so I'm going to take you to the next step. If you're still finishing the last one, that's okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to go through all the ones that you circled, and I want you to put either 1 being you experience this a little bit, it's present in your life, but not very much, up to a 5, it's constant, I always experience this, it's intense. So 1 through 5 being intensity of experience. I experience it a little bit, 5 being I experience it a lot.
One is low, 5 is high.
1 is low intensity, 5 is high intensity. When you're done with that part, put your name 10 back to the rest. One is low intensity, 5 is high intensity. Okay. Lastly, if there's any words that you felt like were missing, write that in. Any words you felt like were missing, write that in. Okay. Moment of truth time. Who's willing to share? What was your most intense couple three that you had on there?
What happened?
Any of them? Any of them?
I'll share. Mine was skin conditions, loneliness, and alienation.
Okay. Skin conditions, loneliness, alienation. Okay?
Mine is indecision, muddled thinking, and forgetfulness.
Forgetfulness, did you say? Okay. So you experience stress in your mind a lot.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Who else? Yeah.
I wrote a word in it.
You wrote 2 words in.
I did.
3 words probably.
I wrote 2 words, but you got a third one for me?
Well, it depends on if you, well, just share what you did.
Obsessing.
Okay.
That's good.
Shopping was another one.
Bless Amazon.
And loss of confidence are high ones.
Yeah. I thought you were going to write in, oh, they don't, I don't think they have it on there. The decision-making fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, the indecision is
Indecision,
a
yeah.
very, I just felt like it answered that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
There you go. Okay. Shopping, obsessing.
Obsessing, like just can't stop thinking about the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. And what was your third one?
Loss of confidence.
Loss of confidence. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Paige.
Mine were alienation,
Hmm.
loneliness, and I wrote in loss of direction.
Yeah. Loss of direction.
It's a good one.
Where did you put loss of direction?
Mind,
Mind. Okay. Yeah. The direction, is that connected to like vision, purpose?
yes.
Okay. And is it a specific thing in life or all of life?
I think it's all of life right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Good. Where else? Yeah, Stephanie.
What would you, say, like, feeling like the rug's been pulled out?
What do we think?
Confidence.
Feeling like the rug has been pulled out from under us. What is that?
Like calamity or something, I don't know. Destruction.
Insecurity.
Security. But you did emotion with it. Like, is it like surprising?
Well, I mean, it caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being
I mean, it
caught
kind of
up.
came out of left field.
Yeah.
Like,
Unexpected.
yeah, because I had a real anxiety, and it was something that triggered.
Yeah.
A trigger, and it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what are all these emotions that I feel with anxiety?
Okay.
I've never felt this before, and I don't like the way that it feels.
Yeah.
And then like the obsessing,
Yeah.
the thought pattern, and the what if,
Yeah.
like I've heard a term like future tripping or whatever, where you're,
That's good.
but then also, with that, I think comes shutting down and the lack of confidence,
Yeah.
because you're just like,
Why do you think you shut down?
it's easier.
Yeah. What
I've
else?
been coloring a lot, and that's been really good.
Yeah, what else is it? It's easier, what else is it?
Well, hard to face it.
To shut down.
It's hard to face like what,
It's hard to face it. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're going into kind of a self-preservation mode, right? You're protecting yourself.
and I also heard another, what is it, that word I can never remember, yeah.
He doesn't want to be the answer man. So.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of like, the fight or flight, but it's a different word for that.
Freeze. There's 3 of those, but yeah, that's the limbic system, the lizard brain. So it's called lizard brain.
Turtle.
Yeah.
Put your head back in.
Yeah. Okay. The unexpected one, I really appreciate you sharing that. And when you were caught off guard, you said that you were triggered and a lot of anxiety. Okay. And so like, almost like, were you like flooded with emotions and anxiety?
Yeah,
Okay. And I feel like unexpected flooding is a good one to add somewhere in there. Did you find that it like, was it probably like based out of emotion or mind?
yeah, and almost paralyzing, and the
Wow.
obsessive, and then the what if, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the not feeling safe.
Yeah. Not feeling safe. Which sometimes when we say insecure, that's not quite the same thing,
Right.
right?
Sure,
Because
right.
insecure is like, I don't know if I'm fully like feeling good about something versus I don't feel safe.
Which is a basic need, right?
Oh man. Huge. Huge. It's one of the biggest things I work to do with clients. They come in, I have to create safe haven. Like I have to. And when I don't, it sucks. Which I miss it a lot of the time, so I try. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
When it came to behavior, I found it interesting that you only had loss of appetite.
Amen.
I had excessive, I crossed out loss, and
I had the
excessive
same thought, Mom.
desire.
I added that too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's
I mean,
a major
it's
one.
positive thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Increase in appetite.
Yeah,
Insatiable.
Insatiable.
Insatiable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
well, I think that hoarding like cookies, hoarding cookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't hoard them.
Some of these we try to hide, right?
No.
Some of these, Anne's like, I'm not gonna look, you know. The problem, people look at me and they're immediately like, that's how you handle stress. And I'm like, I'm working on it, you know? Okay, so, anybody else want to share? How do you experience stress? How do you experience, yeah, go ahead.
Got digestive issues,
Yeah,
loss of appetite and desire.
yeah,
Panic.
panic. Panic is frightening.
Yeah.
It's awful. Panic sucks. Panic, people, like, there's a reason why we articulate panic from anxiety. Panic is like, I'm in danger. Yeah. Oh, and it's so visceral, isn't it? Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
you can't be talking about it.
No.
And when it's happening and you're watching it,
Then it's also very scary.
yeah.
Yes.
But it's not about me. I'm just saying, like, you don't
Yeah.
know what you can't pull someone
Yeah,
out of
we're gonna
that.
make it about you.
No. It's just like,
What she needs is for you to be with
Yeah.
her.
uh-huh. No, it's just watching it happen.
Yes, no,
It's super scary.
It's also
to see it, and
terrifying.
you know it's terrifying for them.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned digestive issues. Anybody, how many of you had something to do with either eating, appetite, digestive issues, anything like that? Raise your hand. Want to know something really interesting? In the 90s, they found that our brain is not just the only place where we process things neurologically. So we have the brain, but actually our neurosystem runs all throughout our body, and one of our biggest processing areas runs parallel to our GI tract.
Wait, Weird.
So when people literally like have something hit them with anxiety and stress and they get sick to their stomach, it's your system trying to process something. Isn't that interesting? Or you say, I feel it in my gut. It's a gut feeling. It is. It's literally a gut feeling. Isn't that so interesting? Yeah. Okay. Now, how many of you had more than 3 5s? Okay. More than 3 5s. How many of you had more than 5 5s? Okay. How many of you had more than 10 5s? The people that are, I'm asking that, are the people that don't want to raise their hand. They're in anxiety, and so they're like, why are you making me raise my hand? Okay. How many of you were surprised at how many things you circled? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay. What was?
I actually did a circle, I just underlined the ones that weren't applicable.
There you go. That works. Yeah, just cross off a few there. Yeah. So here's a question. Take a moment and think about listening to other people share how they've experienced stress. What happened? Was there anybody that shared that when they shared, you were like, yeah, that?
Yeah.
Who was it for you? Who was it for you that did that?
And
Taylor, who was it?
Stephanie.
When Stephanie shared, what did you experience?
I also get like flooded with anxiety when it comes.
Yeah.
You get what?
Comes all at once. Floods, like just floods my mind.
Yeah.
Even
Okay.
if I'm like, where's that coming from? I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay. Good. Thank you,
I thought of that word that I put my husband on the line.
Taylor. Yeah.
That's what I make sense.
Ready? My chair is broken. Hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance. Yeah.
Can you, what's your, how can you describe hypervigilance in your,
I think it's an intense need to basically be on alert so that you don't get hurt. Okay, who else? When somebody shared, it made you go, oh yeah, me too. Anybody else experience that? Yes, Catherine.
When Jerry said loneliness,
Yeah.
being the only one, I feel that because there's Asperger in my family,
Oh yeah.
and you know, with many people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's hard to deal with constantly
Yeah.
over the years. You know?
Over the years, yeah. Takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
What else is with the loneliness with that?
Well, you know, you trust the Lord that He would change the mind and the brain.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot about neuroscience and
Yeah.
following Caroline Leaf, read her last book, you
Oh,
know.
yeah, yeah.
So that's the way I'm strengthened. I can change another person.
Yeah.
But, you know, you believe in miracles,
Yeah.
and like I'm saying,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like, you know, the brain, I know it's malleable and can,
Yeah.
you know, change, but is an Asperger brain always an Asperger brain? You
Right,
know?
yeah.
I'm like dealing with that question.
Yeah. Yeah. What an intense question, too.
Yeah.
Do you, when you said for years and it's all around, I got this sense of almost like being powerless to it.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right or did I not?
Well, you know, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
we discovered that my husband, it's
Uh-huh.
what he had suffered,
Okay.
you know, all
Yeah.
his life, and I didn't know that for like almost 30 years.
Yeah.
So,
Did that give you some sense of
yeah, relief.
relief? Yeah.
There is a path forward.
Yeah.
But still, the daily
Yeah.
not being feeling understood and, you
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
it's, yeah,
Not being understood
Yeah.
is the key to loneliness,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh my goodness, thank you for sharing that.
So,
No, beautiful, thank you. As Catherine shared, anybody else experience that sense of loneliness? Anybody else experience that?
she said it as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So something I've been contemplating even these last couple of weeks that I just kind of highlighted here is, God's been so good and I've got such a blessed life yet. I've gone through a lot of losses in my life, a lot of things, like everybody, but it's just been really hard in a lot of different ways. And I realized this loss of desire, and that took me on a trail of, I realized that I've shut off to loving others. You know, this loneliness and this alienation is definitely something I feel happening inside of me. Like, I don't want to cross the barrier. Like, I know that we're called to love each other, yet it's been the things that I faced and the losses that I've gone through. There's just a lot of stuff there. I realized, you know, the last 2 weeks, like, Lord, I just feel like I'm here and people are here and there's this big wall. Like, I feel this huge wall in me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I venture out again? How do I even dare to go out there again? You know, within myself. So that's just really
yeah.
magnified right now. Or,
Julie, can you help me unpack that just a little bit for me? What's, if you're willing to, if you're not, that's totally fine.
well, see.
What built that wall?
Quite a few losses I've lost just in the last 10 years. A mother, a father, 2 brothers, and then I lost a brother long ago. So, and then my sister's situation, and then just some major betrayals that have happened to me. That's probably really the key right there. And you know, when you love people, the losses are so hard to me that when you love people, to that extent, and you go through those losses, it just hits you at the core of your being.
Yeah.
And so, and when betrayal, you
Yeah.
know, is huge too.
Oh, it is
It's
hard.
absolutely huge, and you know, there's just not a lot of things
Yeah.
in your life. But God
Yeah,
has been so good.
sure,
So good to me.
yeah.
But, yeah.
When she was saying that about loss and betrayal, like loss that comes from death, like there's a level of grief in that. But then it's almost more hurtful. I mean, it's very painful, you can't get them back. But when someone betrays you and walks away, it's like, it's not just a loss, it's actually an assault on who you are as well.
Yeah.
And it is so painful, and like when you were saying that, I totally get that. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
experience that, and we don't realize that we put up walls now, and we're not gonna
Yeah.
continue to connect with people
Yeah.
in the way that we were meant to.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah, Paige.
I very much connect with the loss that you were speaking about, and one of the things that I find adds to the walls is that as a believer, you know, we grow up submitting our thoughts and our hearts to what we know that we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So accompanying that is this disappointment in yourself that you can't somehow will your heart beyond what you're feeling, like you can't deny the wall, you can't deny that you're
Yeah.
being self-preserving,
Right,
and then you add to that the disappointment that you're not doing it.
yeah.
I know I'm supposed to do this, but my heart won't submit to
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
thing that I see is clearly written out in the
Yeah.
word that I'm supposed to do.
yeah. So, there's a really huge word you're hitting on right there. Shame,
Yes.
right? Shame. Stress hits, adversity hits, loss hits, betrayal hits. You crunch down, which is where we essentially handle it in an unhealthy way. Maybe a way that we mean to, we go, oh, I'm gonna I'm just gonna forget about the day in this Umpqua chocolate peanut butter ice cream. Or it's something we don't have any control over, suffering that, and we just, it makes things worse and worse and worse. And then that leads to this question of, what's wrong with me? That's what you were describing just now, Paige. Why can't I just control these feelings? Why can't I just control these thoughts? What's wrong with me? That's shame. There's something defective about me. Here's the beautiful thing about that. There's true shame and there's false shame. Now, true shame, if I were to go out and I were to steal something from Target and my children were to look at me as I'm getting handcuffed, I would feel ashamed. Right? That's true shame. Mm-hmm. And then if I pay for it and pay the penalty or go to jail or whatever, I've paid my dues, and I go to my children and I say, what I did was wrong, but I've paid my dues, and I won't do it again. And they look at me with joy, Daddy's restored. The shame breaks up. I don't feel ashamed anymore. Right? False shame doesn't break up. No matter how many times you try to fix it, even as believers, this is the place that we go to. No matter how many times we confess it, it doesn't break up. That should tell you something about what's going on in that moment. The scriptures are very clear. If we confess our sins, He is faithful. I don't know of any moment that God has missed it. I don't know of any moment that God has not followed through on what He said He will do.
That's good.
If we confess our sin, He is faithful. So that means that false shame is a lie that we have believed. Something's wrong with me. Now we believe Genesis 3. We believe that Romans 3, that connects with Genesis 3, that all have fallen short of God's glorious perfection. Right? So we go, well, yeah, something's wrong with me. I'm a sinful, broken human being. Agreed. But that's not who we are. Because who we are is now hidden in Christ. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Right? We're responsible. We have to confess our sins, but our sins are no longer who we are. Because who we are is hidden in Christ. That's our identity. We have to be able to pull apart what we are is identity versus what we are responsible for. Mm-hmm. False shame attacks our identity. And we think we're responsible, and so we need to confess and we need to fix. But it never breaks up because it's not attacking our responsibility, it's attacking our identity. So, how does this play out? Paige, are you willing to walk with me a little further on your story?
Yeah.
Okay. If at any point you're like, no more, okay, let me know. So, help me understand. I remember a little bit of what you said, but unpack for me a little bit more. What is it that causes that sense of, why can't I do this? Or why can't I get it right?
Well, in the past, when I go through rough patches,
Yeah.
I can process it out in my mind.
Okay.
The truth from a lie.
Okay.
Just by lining it up with the Word, or even my history with God and who I know God is. But in this season of my life, with outside social stresses and isolation, and then I've had death in my family, and just a lot of loss.
Yeah.
What Julie was saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of decrease happening
Mm.
in several areas of my life.
Mm.
Waiting.
Waiting.
Things to get better
Yeah.
or play out or having faith and watching my faith erode
Yeah.
and actually shift into hopelessness.
Mm,
I know the truth and I don't want to be hopeless, but I am.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make myself have faith.
Yeah.
And be the person that I used to be prior to the low spot. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't seem to be able to just submit my heart and my thoughts. I try to make my thoughts stay on something, but they're so scattered that I can't keep them in one spot long enough to process it in my heart.
And being a Christian, what does that do? With
It
that?
makes me feel like an utter failure.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm failing at this thing that I vowed that I would live out.
Yeah.
And I can't live it out anymore.
Yeah.
And then it makes me question how solid it was
To begin with?
to begin with, because I could do it in good times.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that if you can't do it in bad times, how solid was it in your life to begin with?
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
has
Wow.
made me question even my identity.
Yeah. Yeah, because you used an identity statement there, didn't you?
Yes, I definitely did.
What was your identity statement? I am an utter.
Failure. Yeah.
Yeah.
At living out this thing called Christianity.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm an utter failure. Aren't we? Are we utter failures?
No,
What tells you?
it's not my job
What's not your job?
to make me a success.
Yeah.
That's Jesus. I have to cooperate.
I suck at that sometimes.
It's not my job. I know the truth. I know that
Yeah.
it's God's job.
Yes, you do. You know the truth. But where does your heart want to go?
My heart wants to hide
Yeah.
until I can get it figured out.
Yeah.
And then you feel very exposed because everybody knows that you don't have it all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm comforted to know that I'm not the only one. that-
You're in a room full of people that
I
are
am
in
not-
the exact same.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only freak. You know?
Anybody else, has the stress driven you to this place of feeling like you're failing at being a Christian?
Yeah.
Anybody ever deal with that? Isn't that so interesting? I'll give you a little, it's actually, sometimes it's harder for me to have clients who are Christians. Because we come in with such an expectation that we should have it all together. Right? Oh man. But let me ask you this question. I had to face this yesterday. I had to spend an hour and a half just with Dr. Manock by myself, processing my sense of, but what if I'm a failure? What if we are, Paige?
I have Jesus.
What does it change? Because Jesus came for the failures. But somewhere in there, your Christianity says you can't be sad and you can't be struggling with hope. Somewhere in there, your Christianity doesn't make any room for that. And says you start to feel like you better get away from that because somehow that invalidates what God has done. Paige, your sadness and your hopelessness has not invalidated anything that God has done in your life. You're sad because you have a very good reason to be sad. You do. You've experienced intense loss. You used the word that was such a, people don't use this word around me as much, but it really hit me. Everything in my life is decreasing. That's like taking a step back from your life and just looking at the overall and seeing kind of on a macro level. It's all decreasing. You have real reason to be sad. But can I ask you this question? What's wrong with your sadness?
It's painful.
Yeah, it is. It is painful. But is it wrong? Are you sure?
Well,
Because
it's
you've
the right
been.
answer. I know the right answer.
Have you been treating your sadness like it's wrong or right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Your sadness is there for a really good reason. Your sadness is actually a gift. Your sadness validates the beauty of what God's done in your life. To the degree to which we are sad is a degree to which we had something beautiful.
Oh, well, that's good.
Paige, you must have had a lot of beautiful things in your life.
Yeah.
And you're grieving that. And that's so hard. But that's okay. You go back and you read the Psalms, and all of a sudden the Psalms, you realize that David half the time is grieving. He's grieving. But there's never a point where he says, there's a couple of times where he says things like, basically, remember the Lord, forget not all of his benefits, right? But he never pens in there, I shouldn't have been sad about that. I think that David's sadness was a key to him having that deep relationship with the Lord. A man after God's own heart, because I don't know any other being in the universe that has grieved more than God has. No one knows grief like God does. But David was willing to say, I don't know if this grief is right or wrong, but I'm going to bring it to you. And I'm going to make room, and I'm going to see if you're going to accept me in my grief.
Wow. That's really good.
And then he said, it's a man after my own heart, because he's willing to bring me the grief. We have a terrible theology of pain. Really bad. I've had a terrible theology of pain. We almost view pain like it's sin. It's not.
Right.
If pain is sin, then God has sinned.
Oh, it's good.
The other one we really struggle with in the Christian church is anger. If anger is sin, then God has sinned. And we're done. We should be done. We should leave. I hear people and they go, he's so angry, he shouldn't be so angry. And I'm like, he's angry for a really good reason.
Yeah.
But he's a Christian. Have you read the Old Testament? It grieved his heart. He was angered. Sadness is a sign, to the degree to which you grieve something is the degree to which you had a beautiful, wonderful thing going about. I had a dear, dear friend. I was her youth pastor from middle school through her high school. I walked with her after high school into her college years. I helped set her up with her boyfriend, who was going to be her husband. She would spend holidays with us. Her family was super close to us. She was like, I'm the youngest of four, and so she was like the little sister I never had. And she died on January 24th, a few years ago. She had just spent Christmas with us because her family was out of town. And I place of accepting that God took her. But it's so hard because the gift that she was in our lives was so rich. And we have a little picture frame with multiple pictures of her, big moments we were with her in her life for. And I walk by it every day. And some days I feel really glad because I remember those moments, but some days I feel really sad. But I know that they actually come from the same place, that because she was a gift. And I don't think God's upset with me for still being sad about it. I think he actually lets my sadness be a gift to me, to remind me of the gift, to remind me of who she was, to remind me of the care that she gave me, to remind me of the joy that we had, of the pain that we shared. So, one of the things I figured out in the 90s, 2 things bond us to people. Shared pleasure and shared pain. Our society thinks that if we share pleasure, that's the height of bondedness. But all we have to do is turn on the TV for a few minutes to realize that that's not true. The person that you're able to fight with or cry with and then repair with, that's the person you are closest to. And then, once you repair, the pleasure is beautiful. I know most people don't like to hear me say this, but my wife and I have great makeup sex. Because when you fight it out and you're at this place of this person that you trust so much and you're so connected to, and you're in this place of pain together and you work through it, oh, the connection afterwards, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Paul knew it. I want to know Christ. I want to share in the fellowship of such sufferings, that I may attain the resurrection. He knew you have to bond with Christ in pain. That's what baptism is a sign of. But we're so concerned about making everybody happy that we think, oh my goodness, we've got to do fun things together, share pleasure, and it's got to be good, it's got to be good. And we're so anxious about it that everybody's miserable.
It's good.
But then you have somebody that you walk through fire with, and you come out the other side, and you can sit together and just sip, a nice cold lemonade on the deck afterwards, and you're having more pleasure just because you have a bonded relationship.
It's good.
So, Paige led us so beautifully into what we call the stress to shame cycle. Stress hits, you crunch down, basically you go from external stress to internal, like something, basically the internal pressure inside of you. And then you go into something's wrong with me, creates a lot of shame statements, false shame, but that false shame then stresses us out more. And then the cycle just goes through and through and through and through and through, right? And so what we found with Paige's story was we found that her sadness is actually nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually a really beautiful gift. And if we can do what I modeled with her, it stops the shame cycle. Did you feel like the shame kind of broke up a little bit for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we do. So, often with the stress, we go into like negative ways of dealing with the stress. So whether it's loss of appetite, insomnia, muddled thinking, worrying, we can tend to kind of try to self-medicate. Major self-medications that I experience with people, with a lot of men, it's pornography, workaholism, and then alcoholism. Not just with men, that's across the board. Actually, back in about 20 years ago, only about 30% of females would view pornography. It's up over 50% now. So pornography is actually a male-female thing, big time. Smoking marijuana, other kinds of drugs, and unfortunately, most of the self-medicating type of behaviors actually induce more shame. And if we look at our cycle, the shame creates more stress. And it actually becomes something that's very destructive. So, when somebody comes in and they're an alcoholic, or I had a guy come in who was smoking weed 5-6 times a day, and I don't go, "What's wrong with you? You're an awful person. What's your deal? Get your act together." Or I don't go, "Thou shalt not." I sit down with him and I say, "So when you smoke weed, what's going on in life in that moment? I want to know about that." And then I end up telling him later that if he wants to do therapy, that he has to stop smoking weed because it actually affects your neurology, so that the work that I want to do with him is ineffective if he's high all the time. We can't heal the neural pathways if he's high all the time. But he stopped. He quit smoking weed. I was like, sweet. I'll work with him. So, neurological responses to relational needs. It turns out we're very integrated. What goes on in our mind has to do with relationships. Anger is a sign of a blocked relational goal, because anger is a passion emotion. What you are passionate for, you become angry about.
So what again?
It's a passion emotion.
Yeah, but what does it lead to? You said?
It's a sign of a blocked relational goal. Audrey, you had your hand up.
No.
Oh. What happened? Did I just see it?
She's just twitching.
Oh, okay.
I do that sometimes.
Sorry about that. Okay. So if I'm getting frustrated with my son, my 4-year-old adorable little boy, and his cuteness works against me, I'm getting angry because I have a goal in this relationship to help him become a young man who knows that he's loved, knows that he belongs, not even first to me, but to the one who knit him together. I have such a goal, and when there's a problem to him getting to that, I become angry. Now, most of us, well, I'm not going to say most of us, a lot of people I deal with, when someone becomes angry, they view that as the problem, and they say, "You need to stop being angry before we can work through this." And I go, "No, he's angry for a really good reason. There's something he wants in the relationship that's probably a really good thing, and he's not getting it." And you find that the people who are just angry people have had so many relational goals blocked that they've just started to live in their anger. They wanted their dad to acknowledge them and affirm them. They wanted their mom to actually look at them and care about them instead of just the house and everything that was going on, and being freaked out and being anxious. They wanted to not be made fun of and criticized and hurt by their brother and his friends all the time. They wanted their dad to step up and fight for them when they had been raped. They wanted their mom to come home instead of being out with every other different guy. and happen to be raised by grandma. I just listed 5 clients I've dealt with. They're angry for a really good reason. But people have punished them for their anger. Anger is a sign of a blocked relational goal. So guess what? Help them achieve that goal. Guess what breaks up? The anger. Think about scriptures. Think about God and his anger. A blocked relational goal. This is from the neuroscience stuff. Isn't that amazing? I love it. Anxiety, sign of an uncertain relational goal. Not sure if this relational aspect will work out. Causes you anxiety.
Say that again.
Anxiety is a sign of an uncertain relational goal. Insecurity, sign of an unreachable relational goal. So, when we experience anger, anxiety, insecurity, these are actual neurological responses, not because there's something defective about us. That's what the false shame says. It's because we have deep desires for things that we're not getting to. And so we respond neurologically this way. Do I need to keep that up there a little longer? I see a lot of people writing, so I'm just making sure.
So how do we fix those responses?
I didn't even pay attention to the black part.
Cart before the horse, Stephanie. Cart before the horse.
I only see white. I didn't even pay attention to the whole black side of the screen there. I was like, oh my gosh.
So, this is what Dr. Mannock calls the stress co-regulated cycle. Stress hits, you crunch down, deal with panic. Taylor deals with panic. Probably more than just Taylor. You co-regulate. Yes, I'll go into what co-regulation is. You co-regulate, and what comes out of that? Affirmation, clarity, growth. Anxiety breaks up. Anger breaks up. Insecurity breaks up. For peace of mind. Okay? So, breaking down what co-regulation is. Anytime you see a DM, that's for David Mannock. I'm pulling from his research. See the DM up there? I like to attribute where it comes from. Y'all think that I came up with this stuff. No way. I'm just the messenger. In co-regulation, you are moving towards each other, and then you hold what it is together, explore it together, and if possible, but this is not the burden, if possible, you resolve. Okay? So, as multiple of you shared, I would take that and I would explore it with you. Did you notice that? Stephanie, help me understand what pulling the rug out from under you means. But I didn't just say, you said something about a rug being pulled out. I didn't quite get it. No, I matched her tone. I matched her words. And I even matched her actions. Because we're integrated people. We don't just say things, we don't just think things. We do it all at the same time. So if I'm going to be with her in it, I have to be with her in what she thought, in what she said, in what she did. That's the exploring it together. And I'm going to break that down even further, okay? We explore together. We're moving toward. You notice when Paige started to share, did anybody notice what I did? Physically with my body? What did I do? Turn towards her. What else did I do?
Eye contact.
Eye contact. What else did I do?
Well, you softened your.
I know she was going soft. She wasn't she wasn't timid, but she was slightly hesitant, so I matched that with her. But then I actually even did this. Because I want her system to pick up, even unconsciously, I'm moving toward her. And it's not like a manipulation thing. It's a sign of what I'm doing in my heart. I just want her to know I'm not just listening, I'm interested. I'm open. I'm moving towards. Now, I didn't tell her all the ways that she needs to fix her sadness. I don't know if I even offered her any fix. But I moved toward her and I explored it and I held it with her. Right? In the process.
You gave her permission.
I did give her permission. That was one of the fixes. Cart before the horse. Definitely.
Future tripping.
Yeah.
Future tripping, Stephanie.
So in the process, you not only get solutions, which permission was a big part of that, but you bond with the person. I want to tell you what, Emily beat me to the punch because I wanted to go back there and give Paige a hug. I was so thankful for what she shared. It was so vulnerable and so real and so good. And all of a sudden, I don't really know Paige that well, but all of a sudden I can see how sad she is. Oh my goodness, she must have super cherished what was going on. Like it must have been beautiful. And that makes me go, I want to know more about that. You bond with the person, which is the greater healing. When you have co-regulated, 1, you see clearly how to improve. 2, you see the value of what you're doing. And 3, you see reality. See, when stress hits and false shame hits, you're pulled out of reality. Because she knows reality is that she's not disqualified as a Christian because Jesus came for the sick, right? But you weren't able to be in that reality. You knew it, but you weren't able to experience it. But when we move towards each other and we connect and we bond and we co-regulate, all of a sudden, you can say with a lot more conviction, I know that Jesus is willing to come after me, even if I'm sick. All of a sudden you believe it, because you're back into that reality. And you see the part you have to play. So, sometimes I've had some people ask me, is co-regulation just really good listening? And the answer is, sort of. This is what we use as kind of like a baseline of trying to help co-regulate with people, called REV. And I'll give you a little bit extra too. Write down these 3 words. Slow, and then write down slice, and then write down rev. Rev, R-E-V. Slow it down, slice it thinner, rev it. We move too fast. Our brains
Future tripping.
are rabbits. Our heart, turtle. So one of the biggest, this was part of what I was processing with Dr. Minnock yesterday, one of the biggest things that I can struggle with is I have a client come in and they share all these things and I see all these ways that they're wounded and all the gaps that they need and the attachment pains that they have and all these things, and I just want to launch into all of it. But the truth is that I haven't bonded with them yet. So even if I were to say all of it, and I've done this, it just goes in one ear and right out the other, and it doesn't actually break up their anxiety and pain.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do sometimes with the Christian CBT thing.
Yeah.
Of course they need the scriptures. Of course they need to pray and give thanks. Of course we don't want them to be anxious. Of course they need to trust in the Lord with all their heart. But they need to be bonded first. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. You start with bearing their burden with them, you bond with them, all of a sudden their heart's open for you to say everything else you need to say. And I think what actually happens is our heart opens up to what God wants to then say. And so we realize that list of scriptures that we're going to give them, we don't actually need to give them. We just need to incarnate a couple of them with them. And then they get a hunger to be in the Word. And they go search it out themselves and bond with Jesus. Jesus is the best to bond to. And he loves to bond with people. And he's the easiest to bond to. Because he says things like this, come to me, all you who are weary, and you're burdened. I'm going to give you rest. Take my burden on you. Take my yoke. It's easy. It's light. And the way I teach you, it's gentle. Even though I'm the king, I'm going to be humble in my heart with you. And he loves to bond with people. So, slow it down. Slice it thinner. One of the best ways to slow it down is to slice it thinner. Slice it thinner means just explore it. Pull that apart from me. Pull it apart from me. Okay, so you said pulling the rug out from under you. Okay. Can you pull that apart for me? Can you help me understand that a little bit better? Oh. Like something unexpected. Yeah, like unexpected. Process it more. Slice it thinner. Was that like a lot of anxiety? Was that sadness? Or what was it? Oh. And then she comes back with hypervigilance. Whew. We just sliced it thinner, sliced it thinner, sliced it thinner. So on there, that's under, I did a lot of what was called sustained empathetic inquiry. Continually inquiring with an empathetic heart and tone. Not with a tone that says, I'm going to fix you. Tell me a problem, I'll diagnose it, and send you on your way. No, it's a tone of, I want to be with you in this. Can you share with me more? And if somebody's angry, I need to empathize with their anger. That is frustrating. That is hard. I'm the classic compensatory dude. I don't know if there's a classic compensatory dude.
Can you slice that thinner for me?
I will. Thanks for asking, Emily. I really appreciate it. Let me take that back. I'm not classic as a male because I'm weirdly relationally wired, and so my wife is intense and very left brain, logic, plan it out, Stephanie style. I'm like, let's be in the moment. Let's just sit in this, babe. And she's like, sit in what? We need to get crap done, you know?
Let's make a list.
Speaking her language. So she's someone who's very intense. Most people that meet her would never think that. Okay? Emily's like, she's not that. She's a sweetheart. She is. She can be both. So, she's very intense. And so when she would get intense or angry, I would compensate. I get very soft. Very gentle. Let's think through this, babe. Don't tell me to think through it. I want it done. I understand that you want it done, but let's talk about how we feel about this. I don't want to talk about feelings. It just needs to get done. I hear you. You're not hearing me. So I went to Dr. Malik and I said, what do I do? And he said, get angry with her. And I'm like, what? And he said, not at her. Don't get angry at her. Get angry with her. When she's angry about something, you get angry about it too. I'm like, I'm just not an angry person, Doctor. Okay? My badge is Christian honor. Right?
You want to know that somebody's on your side.
Yeah.
We're getting there, okay? So, we're going to slow it down a little bit more. So, I did that though, but here's the thing. Here's what I had to get to in my own brain. Because when one person, and it doesn't have to be like your wife's angry and you're not, it could be your husband's angry and you're not. It works that way too. You go, well, I'm just not an angry person. And I hear people say this all the time. I'm not willing to give up who I am for them. And immediately I'm like, red flag. When you were dating them, you were willing to do whatever it was they were interested in.
Yep.
My wife is Swiss. She yodels. I talked to her dad about marrying her at a Swiss function in Portland while they were wrestling in sawdust. Catherine knows what I'm talking about. It's called schwinging. Right? I didn't grow up being like, I sure hope I get to talk to my future wife's dad in front of some guys throwing massive stones. What's that one called?
I know it in French, but I wouldn't know it.
Oh, okay, yeah. They do all these different things that I would never do. They literally pick up this stone and they say who can throw it the farthest, which sounds awesome to me. But and then they wrestle each other in these sawdust rings, and they've got burlap like shorts with leather belts over their farm clothes, and they like swing each other around and like suplex each other. And I didn't know I'd be having a heart-to-heart with my father-in-law. I never imagined this is what it will be like. But it's because that's who my wife was. And so I moved toward her. I was willing to do it then.
Yeah.
Why can't I move toward her when she's angry? I don't want to lose who I am. BS. You don't want to face the pain she's in. Thanks, Dr. Mannock. So, she gets really angry. It was our two little angels that got her this way. And so, kids, go back in your room. Sweetie, let's go downstairs. Whatever! Goes downstairs. She really is such a sweetheart. And she grabs a pillow and she's like, and like screaming into it and like punching it. And keep in mind, guess what my wife did when she was really frustrated with not getting a relational goal when she was a young child? Guess what she would do?
Punch the wall.
She'd go into her room and she'd punch her pillow and she'd scream into it.
Wow.
Now she's doing it in her 30s. We all do the same thing we did when we were kids. It just looks more mature. I'm an adult. So I go in there and I'm faced with this moment. What do I do? I'm not an angry person. Doesn't matter. I'm also not Swiss. And I don't put on burlap shorts and swing people around in sawdust. But I'm willing to go there because I love her. So I grab a pillow and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me! They don't listen to you! And I get angry. Now, previous times what I would do is they'd be up there, and especially in front of the children. Classic move. Really good. Sweetie, we're the parents.
Oh no.
Sweetie, they're 4 and 7. Didn't work.
No.
Yeah, I know. You're laughing at me now. I'm being vulnerable, sharing my pain. Stress comes because I lose confidence because Emily laughs at me. I'm kidding. So
I'm co-regulating, you just
so
didn't know it.
yeah, I know. So I'm down there, I'm punching the pillows with her, I'm screaming into them. I'm like, this is awkward, but I'll do it, and it's really awkward to see guys grabbing each other by the shorts and swinging each other around too. So it's, we embrace the awkward. And so I do it, and in a few minutes later, she calms down. Which I found that the previous things I would do, like saying we're the parents, wouldn't make her calm down. Weird. And she calms down, and then she looks at me, and this is what she says. She says, but you know what, babe? We're the parents. And they are 4 and 7. And I'm at a fork in the road in that moment. I could do something really productive, or I could do what I really feel like doing, which is saying, I've told you that, sweetheart. 100 times. I'm glad you're finally getting it. You want to know what I said? I said, yes, they are. And she said, let's go back up there and let's talk to them. Sounds good, babe. Thanks. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. Julie's giving me thumbs up in the back. She's like, you got it! Yeah, it was like the one time I got it. We're working on it. So, co-regulation is to be with somebody in their experience, not for the sake of fixing them, but just because we want to be with them. They know they're not alone. How do you get there? Reflect, give them presence, turn towards them, put down the phone, turn off the TV, close the laptop, whatever else you have to do. Signal to them you are present, and then attune to their experience, okay? Presence is coming, facing each other. Attuning is leaning in, okay? Lean in. Sometimes we have to physically lean in. When some of you shared, I would actually step forward and listen. I'm signaling, I'm attuning with your experience. And then you resonate, which is down on evoke. But resonate is you communicate the same energy. Emotions are literally electrical energy in your body. You are communicating the same energy, and no, I'm not being a weird Easterner. I'm not talking about weird energies and auras. I'm literally talking about the neuro pathways that have energy flowing through them. That's what creates emotions. So I'm going to match her energy. I'm not going to be compensatory that way. Because guess what happens? When I become compensatory, I do this. I've become better. Where does that put her? In shame. I'm an awful parent. I'm the worst. I'm not a good Christian. I get too angry. You're angry because you want your kids to honor you. That's a good desire. I'm glad you want them to honor you, because if they learn to honor you, they're probably going to be able to honor others a lot better. I'm glad you're angry about that. All of a sudden, we're together. Nonverbal tells you what is under the waterline. I didn't go into the waterline today, but nonverbal cues are really important, okay? So, if they are closed, that's telling you something. If they are not facing you, that's telling you something. You see it in their face, it's telling you something. Listen to those things. They're telling you more than their words are saying. I have the classic thing where like a couple is like, I can't stand each other, I'm going to leave, and I hate you, and I wish you would just leave, and I think I'm going to leave, and they come in, they share how they said all those things, and then I turn to her and I say, why didn't you leave? Did you have some contract saying that you couldn't leave the house? No. Well, why didn't you leave? Because I don't want to leave. I want him to come near me. But you said you wanted to leave. That's not what I meant. No. Listen for the nonverbal. If she didn't leave the house, she doesn't want to leave. She's just trying to get your attention. Say something dramatic enough that you'll listen to her. Nonverbals tell you 95% of what someone is saying. That's why Jesus coming in the flesh was so important. The revealed word of God is beautiful. The nonverbal God walking among us tells us so much about God. Sorry. These are all the things I'm not allowed to say in certain places, and I'm like, Emily's like, you can say it here. And so I'm like, I'm going to say it.
Good.
Pick up on the subjective experience. Okay. Jordan's over there. If Emily was holding up a diamond, Jordan could look at it and she'd say, I see like a hue of green in it. And I'd say, well, I see a hue of pink, actually. And we could start arguing about what is actually seen. Okay? I'm seeing the pink. She's seeing the green. Neither of us are wrong. Now, I'm not saying that there's no such thing as absolute truth. There is absolute truth. Emily's holding the absolute truth. It's a diamond. That's the absolute truth. But my experience of the diamond and her experience of the diamond are different things. And so if I go, let me walk over next to you. I want to see your experience of it. Oh, it is green from this angle. From where I experience it, it's this. Can you come with me? Oh, we get it. Do you think we'll keep arguing about whether it's pink or it's green? No, because we've gotten each other's experience. Huge. You do that by reflecting with people. That's why I ask so many questions. That's the sustained empathetic inquiry. That's the, tell me more about that. I'm trying to get your experience. Okay? People talk about, is co-regulation just good listening? You ever hear of, you've got to listen, there's two ways to listen. Anybody ever heard that? You listen to hear and listen to what?
Understand.
Understand. There's a third way. Listen to hear, listen to understand, listen to experience. You ever sat with somebody and you were crying about something and pretty soon they got it and they were crying with you too? And then you don't feel alone and you feel so good? It's because you're co-regulated with. There's actually a whole neurological system in your brain called the mirror neuron system that activates, and you actually see yourself better when that activates. God made us to actually see ourselves better. Adam wakes up from having his rib taken out, and he looks at Eve and he says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, I see me. I'm no longer alone. He literally designed us this way. Evoke. Ask evocative questions such as, what's happening? I see those tears. Help me understand those tears. Evoke. Ask questions. Sustained empathetic inquiry. Resonate. Communicate the same energy. If they're quiet, get quiet. If they're loud, get loud. You resonate with them. Validate. Validate what they're experiencing. No, that doesn't mean that you're like... I get a little bit hesitant of the whole phrase, what's my truth? Because I think truth is a word that we should be really careful with. It's like a diamond. Like nobody just kind of throws a really expensive diamond all around.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise they don't really understand the value of it.
It's really good.
Right? Truth is valuable. But your experience is really important. And so as you walk through what you're experiencing, I'm going to validate it, and especially in an attachment language. I'm looking for the ways that Julie, as she's talking about her loss, I'm looking for the ways that she's talking, and she mentions something about siblings. Oh, those are people she's attached to. And so I ask a question about that. And I ask, so that it's not just that you're like alone, but like you're the only one of the siblings. That's a different thing. I'm the only one to deal with this, versus I'm the only one of the siblings to step in and deal with this. There's an attachment connection there. I'm listening for that. You're the only one of the siblings, and that makes it really alone. That is hard. That's a validating statement right there. I'm validating her pain. I'm validating her frustration. But I'm doing it in an attachment connection. in the context of attachment, needs, desires, longings, experiences. Okay. So, here's the bottom line. 11:30. Bottom line is this. Bonding is healing. Okay? If you come away with nothing else from today, this is it. Bonding is healing. Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens. Bond with them. Share it with them. Experience it with them. You fulfill the law of Christ. It brings healing. So, according to the neuroscience, we found this. If you can sit with somebody and they can share their anxiety with you, and you get their experience, and you co-regulate with them, you reflect and explore it, you match their tone, and you evoke, and you start to experience what they're experiencing, and they know it. They feel you experiencing them. They feel felt. Guess what happens? It breaks up. Because all of a sudden they're not alone with their anxiety. And that breaks up the anxiety. As Paige shared, talking about her shame, man, I started to feel it too. How many of you felt it in the room when she was sharing? Oh my gosh, and how many of us wanted to just go over and just give her a hug and be like, yes, I feel it, right?
Yeah.
But then she's not alone. And it melts that snowball. Maybe it's not like perfectly poof, you know, but there's a layer of it that's broken up. Another layer that's broken up. If people learn to have what we call co-regulatory relationships, their stress and anxiety would just, a layer of it would break up, and a layer of it would break up, and a layer of it would break up. Instead of going to, you know, whatever, you know, umpqua, which is, I love umpqua, but umpqua, or workaholism, or like obsessing in media stuff, or substance, or you know, any of those things. Instead of going to those things, if we went to somebody that we had this relationship with and we bonded with them, it would break up. And then we wouldn't feel shame. We would actually feel affirmation. But the shame, if we go to all those negative things, the shame makes us go back to more stress. Mm-hmm. You can look around the country right now and people are just doing that. And then they're going, I can't live this way. What they need is to be bonded with. I mean, isn't that the gospel?
Yeah, it's really good.
Isn't the gospel that God saw us in our negative, sinful place? We couldn't get out on our own. And he comes and he disrupts the cycle. Mm-hmm. And he bonds with us. One of my favorite scriptures, John 15. Mm-hmm. As the vine and the branch, abide in me, dwell with me, bond with me, and I with you. Apart from me, you can do nothing. The gospel is that God has given himself to us to bond with, and that we give ourselves to him to bond with. And he lifts us out of the muck and the mire, and he gives us a new identity, and he gives us hope. And then he gives us each other to do the same with, to bear one another's burdens, and we fulfill the very thing that Christ came to do. And all of what he's given to us, all of the scripture, is all meant to be seen through the relational lens of connection, abiding, belonging to God. That's why Paul is so big on adoption. That's why it's so important that we know that it's by grace we've been saved. It's that unmerited gift. But a gift cannot be given. You have to receive it. You have to grab hold of it. There has to be connection. It's not a DoorDash meal left on your porch. It's someone coming near you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. You'll seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. So, one of the things that when people are in pain, it's so helpful to go through the pain. All this stuff helps you go through the pain, walk with them in it, because what you'll pull out is who they are, which is who you are is now hidden in Christ. And if they can recover their identity, it breaks up their shame, it breaks up their identity. That's why Paul said we regard no one according to the flesh. He was not interested in people's behaviors. You look at Jesus, yeah, you've got a sinful, adulterous woman, or yeah, you've got a tax collector, and like Jesus didn't make those the main issues. He just wanted to bond with them and connect with them first. And then you see that they fall off. We don't have any recollection of Jesus telling Matthew to never, cheat anyone ever again. But it's assumed because he bonded with Jesus, and we see no more evidence that he acted that way. Zacchaeus, classic, right? Well, it's a kid's story. No, it's a bonding, attachment story. Jesus sees right through Zacchaeus. He says, I want to come to your house. We are all Zacchaeus. Revelation says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone would open the door, I'd come in and I'd fix all their problems and I'd tell them how they've messed up and I'd make sure that they never sin again. No, I would come in and I will sup with them. You ever have dinner with somebody and you just bond with them? That's what it is.
So good.
So, what heals the world is the fruit of God's Spirit that comes out of this bonding. The power and the experiences are to gain attention. The bonding heals. You listen to the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness. 8 of the 9 are all relationship-based. They're all in how you relate to other people. You cannot have the fruit of the Spirit, without it changing your relationships. The last one God gave us so that we would submit ourselves fully to Him. Self-control. But when people experience love from you, and patience from you, and kindness from you, they bond to you, and it opens their heart to the very Spirit that helped you become those things. And it changes the world. It does. I gave you a book. Actually, Emily gave you a book, and a bunch of other churches. Wired for Love. It's not a Christian book, but it's based on this neuroscience, and it helps you step by step develop co-regulatory relationships. It's one of the best we've seen for this stuff. So take it, use it. It's a great little kind of roadmap to help develop those connections and those bonds. I have quite a few other ones I could go over, but the main thing is bonding is healing. The less we let go of trying to fix people or trying to get out of the pain and the stress ourselves, the better it will be. The more we just focus on bonding, the more those things will break up. So, I wanted to leave the last 20-ish minutes for Q&A. I was going to do, let's give this a try, and have somebody be in the hot seat, but we kind of did that already. Paige was phenomenal. You were phenomenal. Thanks, seriously.
You were phenomenal.
So,
You should tell them what you said to me last night, though.
Well, actually, I said I'm only coming if I don't have to participate in breakouts. So she turned around and looked at me and said, you are the breakout session. It just happens, right?
yeah, it does. Well, and how many people felt like they were not alone because of what she shared? Oh my goodness. You were like the breakout teacher. Like, that's what happens. You guys, I am being healed as I do these things.
I bet.
And it's really painful sometimes. Oh my goodness. I was telling my wife the other day, I'm like, okay, I've got a lot of clients right now, And like 8 of them at least are all like walking through things that are causing me to have to face so many things right now. And it's exhausting and tiring, and I have to just drive for a while. But anyway, Q&A. Go ahead, Mark.
The sustained empathetic inquiry.
Yes, sir.
That's a mouthful, but the questioning as you move toward and you're looking for connection and understanding, that's a skill that you've no doubt spent quite a while trying to develop. Can you talk a little bit about how you develop that
Yeah.
and how that differs from the correction things that
Yeah.
you just went through?
Yeah, another phrase, another word instead of inquiry that Dr. Manock likes to use is curiosity. And I think sometimes that actually encapsulates it better. Curiosity, sustained, empathetic curiosity. Just become really curious about what people are talking about. One of the most helpful things for me to do is stop assuming. If I stop assuming, then I'll actually enter into somebody else's experience. Now, a lot of young people these days are like, you don't know what I'm going through. And there's some truth to that, but then there's also, when I hear some older people being like, of course I know what you're going through. I was your age once. There's a lot of truth to that as well. I think when I hear young people go, you don't know what I'm going through, they're not actually saying you don't know. They're saying, I want you to come and experience what I'm experiencing. That's actually what they're asking for. And so if we drop the assumptions of going, well, when I was your age, everything was like this, this, and this, and this, and we just go, I don't know what it's like to be, 25 years old in 2021. What have you been experiencing? What's been difficult? What have you enjoyed? What's been hard? So it's been really hard that I had to, or like I have a client who's a senior during COVID. Well, I remember my senior year. I was working a full-time job. Why can't you just work and get your act together? It doesn't go very well. So, things are pretty crazy right now. For you, what's been like, has it been hard? Has it been easy? Has it been good? Just ask a lot of questions. And then here's the big thing. Give them permission to correct you. Not correct you as in like, tell you what's up, but correct you on their experience. So I think at least 2 or 3 times when somebody shared something, I said, I thought I heard this, but I want to make sure I get it. And yes, that's been formed through a lot of hours of being with people. But the biggest thing I would encourage you regarding sustained empathetic inquiry is open your heart. Open your heart. I think we all know when we come at someone and what they're sharing, we kind of close our hearts to. And that usually makes us go into fixing it. Right? And so, open your heart, slow it down, ask dumb questions. That's what I tell my clients. I'm going to ask you a lot of dumb questions. You're going to tell me something, and I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to think, that's a dumb question. But the point is, I don't want to assume. Because if I assume, I miss what you're experiencing. And so, one of the things that actually on the Rev slide that I took off of there is Dr. Manock always says, lower your IQ 20 points and you'll be a lot better therapist. So I would just say, like, the biggest thing is open your heart, ask dumb questions. And if somebody's like, that seems like a dumb question, just tell them your heart. I just didn't want to assume. I just wanted to hear what you thought about it, what your experience was. They'll respect that. And if they don't, then maybe they can try again another time. They're probably not ready. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I know. I'm starting to feel this way because I've been doing it for a little while now, where it just kind of comes a lot quicker to me because I've been doing it a lot. And I used to feel the same way about Dr. Manock, but I actually still feel that way about every single time I'm with him. And he always says the same line. He said it again yesterday during our training. he said, come on, guys, like, you should get it. And we're like, we don't have 25,000 hours of client experience like you do. You know? So, Denise.
I'm just working with seniors for 38 years.
Yeah.
Nonverbal is so huge.
Yes.
If I'm towering over them,
Yep.
and the shoulds and the ahs are coming out of my mouth, there's no way they're gonna receive any of my information.
Mhm.
So the nonverbals will, is there a chair around, all of them sit in the wheelchair, to get below their eye level,
Yeah.
to make that eye contact, to reach out and touch.
Yeah.
And the tone of voices, you can just see visually, they just kind of, oh, I can
Yep.
trust you, I can talk to you.
Yep. So huge. Elderly people and children. And I know what we're walking through with this, the virus and everything is really difficult and people are trying to figure out how to do it. But one of my biggest concerns along the whole way has been that the vast majority of how children learn from other people relationally is through the face. And we're talking like over 70-75% of what they get from communication is from the face. And so one of my big concerns is like, what have we done to our kids to like withhold, like how confusing and anxiety producing is it to no longer 80% of how you understand something is gone in relationships. And so it's a really tough thing. I'll get to you, Charlotte, in just a minute. And then the other thing was touch is huge. If somebody is really hurting and you're not knowing what to say, if it's appropriate, obviously there are certain situations where it's not appropriate. If they can hold somebody else's hand, I have clients, I say, can you just grab, so-and-so's hand right now? Because it actually activates a part of the neurological system that won't activate any other way. And so touch is huge. Get onto the same level is really huge because then it takes away anxiety and intimidation. With children, it's important to not actually go below them because you still want to communicate that there's a sense of like authority and equality going on at the same time. And sometimes we've actually coddled our kids too much and we try to go under them and it actually is confusing in the dynamic. So, yeah, anyways. Charlotte.
I've had several experiences during COVID because I wear a shield instead of a mask. And children in the stores or in their mom's grocery cart, they're sitting in the cart and she's shopping and they see me come around the corner and they light up.
Yeah.
Is that because they can see my face and my expressions?
Yep. Yeah. It's like if I were to start speaking French right now, Catherine would probably light up because there would be a sense of understanding, right? Children are not understanding as much from what we're saying, what we're doing, because they're not seeing our face very well.
I think they're kind of terrified.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we don't understand kids' anxiety very well because kids will not tell you, I'm really anxious.
Yeah.
They will freak out. They will disobey. They will, they will start hitting their sibling. They will, any other thing. And we go, why would you do that? And then we look at our lives and we go, why in the world am I getting drunk every night? It's the same kind of thing. We act out in ways that are negative and unhealthy. Children do the same thing. So, yeah.
How did you go from being someone, well maybe you still have to do this every time, but most of us in here, I would say, if not all of us, are like leading people, like on some levels even pastoring people. Like the fix it in me is strong. So did you have like headspace that you would get into when you would like meet with people, or do you have a tool, a trick?
I was just processing that with Dr. Mioch yesterday. I still slip into fixing people. Often I can tell that I'm into that because it's causing me anxiety.
Okay.
And so when I'm starting to get anxious about people's situation, that's my little beeper that's saying, you're trying to fix, you're taking on a burden that's not yours. I hit a point a few years ago where, there's a lot in the last 5 years of my journey that God's done some pretty intense things. Like I went to a counseling intensive in Memphis 6 days straight, 5 other pastors and 2 therapists. You don't leave the house for 6 days. It's 7 in the morning till 11 at night, constant this. And so that
Broke your brain.
that was a lot. That changed me. One of the things I came to, though, specifically you're talking about like as a leader, is God very lovingly slapped me upside the head with Jesus' call in Matthew, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden." And I felt like the Lord just put on my heart, most pastors don't actually believe that for themselves. Most leaders don't believe that for themselves. They believe that somehow everybody else is supposed to come and lay their burdens down, and that everybody else is supposed to get a light yoke from Jesus, but not pastors, not leaders. And then he really confronted me with this and said, "You're trying to lead in my name." This is what he put on my heart. "You're trying to lead in my name, but you're picking up a burden that's not one I gave you." So, if you're carrying a burden, if you're trying to live out a burden that's not one I gave you, how is that going to work? Because the yoke and the burden he gives is easy and light. And so it really just kind of confronted me on like when I start to get really bogged down. And I'll tell you what, like this last week was really hard. It was a hard week for me. I've had some client stuff that's been really painful, really hard. And I got super bogged down again. And so I had to spend some time with one of my mentors, and he just so happens to be Dr. Miano, processing and getting co-regulated with myself. I needed to share my burden. I needed to share the pain. I needed to share the fear of being a failure. I needed to share not being enough, not being adequate. I needed to share being disqualified. I had to share it all. And if I'm not doing that on a somewhat regular basis, I'm not ready to do that with other people. When I do that, I lay down my burdens and I'm able to clearly see again what burden Jesus has given me. And then that puts me in the right frame of mind. And so I've set those relationships up with 5 people. And very specifically, like a couple of them, they're part of that cohort, Dr. Manock and then one of the other guys in there. But like even with my wife, I set that relationship up, but that didn't come quickly. That came from us sitting down and praying through things and talking through things and reading some things and watching some of the Dr. Manock seminar stuff and going, "Babe, I really need us to move into this kind of space and how we connect." And then somebody else who hasn't had any of that stuff, and I just shared with them some of the Rev stuff. I said, sometimes I'm burdened, and if you could just kind of like try to get my experience and just ask me dumb questions about it, and just sit with me in it and bear it with me, it would really help. And so I have like 5 people that if it's not this person that I can talk to, then I go to this person. And I am regularly, probably at least 3 times a month, processing my own heart. Because the truth is this, is that leaders bear a lot. It's so much. And if you start counseling people, it's crazy. And the only fix to that is to know that you can't do it. That's it. I can't do it. Like, I need to have other people bear this with me. I even need other people to help me pray it out to Jesus. Like, there's times where I'm like so stuck that I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I'm so discouraged. I just want to leave. And I need to just reach out and go, this is where I'm at. And they speak, they listen to me, and then they help me even bring it to Jesus. Lead me in prayer. Lead me in processing those things. So you set up those types of relationships by telling them very explicitly, this is what I need in this relationship. And you're not like being like demanding, but you're going, hey, like, we're close, and I really respect you and honor you, I want to be able to be this for you, but this is what would be really helpful for me. And I walk through a few of those steps, the being present with me and asking questions and, being with me in the midst of that pain and not trying to fix it, but just share it with me, experience it with me. And I give them those steps, and then they try it, and they suck at it sometimes because they're not constantly doing it with everyone. But it's okay, because all of a sudden I get their heart. Because the fact that they move toward me in it opens me up. And so the very thing that I'm wanting to help other people with, bear their burdens, I need people to bear that with me. That's what brings me back to that place regularly. And then I learned, slowly I've been starting to learn to do that with the Lord. Because God is an attachment figure. Dr. Manock's 7-year PhD is on taking attachment theory in neuroscience and applying it to the fact that God is an attachment figure. And so his 7-year PhD was on that completely. And so learning to bring those same things and process it with the Lord and then with other people as well. So.